You're watching Never an Oscar, that show where we talk about actors who never won Oscars. We've all seen a movie from today's actor, Jim Carrey. Let's talk about it.
My name is Becca Lundgren.
I'm River Tokunaga.
I'm Campbell Morgan.
And I'm Nafisa Wahab.
Now let's get started. My name is Becca, and I chose to watch Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. This film is about a character named Joel who he meets this girl named Clementine, and they soon fall in love. But Clementine, his girlfriend, breaks up with him, and they have a pretty messy, painful breakup. His ex-girlfriend, Clementine, underwent a procedure to erase all of her memories of Joel, but he decides that he's going to also go under the same procedure because it's too painful for him to deal with the memories he had with her. So he goes under this procedure, and while in the process of losing his memories with her, he realizes this isn't what he wants. He doesn't want to lose her. He doesn't want to lose these memories he made with her. And he starts to try to end this, but it's too late. He's already in the process of losing his memories. He tries to figure out how to stop it.
So what do you think of the movie, man? I've been waiting to talk to you about this for like forever.
Yeah, I've been meaning to watch it for a little bit, but it's a wild concept, but it's a really good film.
Yeah.
Like, after I watched it, I was just like, whoa. I really like how they go through the process of him experiencing the pain and processing this grief, and I think they do that really well. But yeah, and Jim Carrey's performance, phenomenal. Right. For the audience, what happens is they, through a process of stuff, they find out, they both lose their memories, and they meet up again and fall in love again, but they forgot all about their previous relationship. But then they find out about the process and the procedure they underwent, and after they discuss and fight a little bit, they decide to stay together even after hearing all the reasons they broke up previously and knowing that they lost their memory.
What I wanted to ask you, though, what do you think of the ending? Like, do you think that they should have, because obviously it's implied that they get back together, right? So did you think that was like the right call on their parts, or do you think it's like kind of destined to fail? Because a lot of people have, there's some, as an audience, there's like mixed feelings about that ending.
I like the decision. I see why some people might disagree with that, but I thought it was really interesting. I thought it was a good way to circle around and the story. They accept that, yeah, there's flaws.
Right.
Yeah, they underwent some procedure and heard some things that they didn't want each other to hear. I thought it was a really good way that, like, hey.
I mean, I think, from a storytelling perspective, it tied it up really nicely. And then I also, even if it was, maybe not the greatest or healthiest relationship, I still found myself, like, through most of the movie, like, really rooting for him to, like, get out of there and be able to, like, go be with her, go say something to her, or wake up. So I was really happy when, come to find out that first scene is, like, actually the present or the future or whatever.
Yeah.
I was really happy they got back together. That for me, it was a happy ending. But I've heard people, other people who have seen the movie say that it's maybe more somber in nature, just because they're destined to break up again or to have those problems with each other again, which they do acknowledge. They acknowledge that when they're that scene in the hallway where they're hearing the recordings.
I think that was a great call, that they decided they stick with each other even though they know, like you said, there's going to be flaws. My favorite scene of this film was at the end when Joel is in one of his last memories with Clementine on the beach. They're, like, in this house, and he recalls this memory he has with her where they're at this house, and he leaves her.
Right.
And he leaves without saying goodbye and ditches her. And he's talking to this memory of Clementine, and she's like, "Why'd you leave?" And he was like, "I don't know. I was scared. I wish I didn't leave.
Yeah.
I wish I stayed." And then she goes, "What if you stayed this time?"
Yeah, that's such a good scene.
Oh
my god.
And then
like with the water and stuff and all that. I know we were talking, like, it's like crazy that they were able to do that. I don't know how they did that house scene. Yeah, it's like
I think it was really cool how they have him like process the regret, and he's like, "What if I did this differently this
Yeah.
time? What if I changed it?" I love this film though. I
yeah,
thought it was great.
Yeah, I thought you'd like it. Yeah.
What would you give it out of 5 stars?
Yeah, that's a good question. I right now would honestly give it a 4.5 out of 5. That might seem generous, but it's a great film. I might have to rewatch it though to get a clear answer.
This is River. I watched Ace Ventura: Pet Detective. I thought it was good. Well, okay, a synopsis first. So Ace Ventura is this like, you know, very cartoonish, exaggerated freelance detective, and he specializes in cases having to do with animals, particularly like animals in bad situations. And, you know, he's kind of a joke in the actual police department, as, you know, a pet detective would be. And yeah, it's, the plot is the football team's mascot, which is a dolphin, a living dolphin, is stolen, and he has to go track it down, and hilarity ensues. I thought this movie was all right. There were I didn't expect it to be as problematic as it was, and not to like, you know, there are definitely worse movies out there. It wasn't to like an egregious extent, but the way that they handled a lot of the female characters was just absolutely unnecessary, and sometimes just a little uncomfortable. You know, like you know, there's just older movies where you're kind of just like face palming, and it's just like, you know, it just would not hold up by today's standards. Having said that, I still think that there were some pretty strong aspects of this movie, and I think the best part would probably just be Jim Carrey himself. And as I'm watching this movie and I'm seeing like the jokes that they're very, very slapsticky movie, which is not, you know, typically like the kind of comedy that I like. I think, well, not that like the comedy that I'm into has to be like, you know, political commentary, or like has to be like, you know, any kind of like facetious or anything like that. You know, like I if it makes me laugh, it makes me laugh. And typically I just don't like these kinds of jokes, but I really think Jim Carrey sold it really well, and he those types of characters he just is so good at playing. And I was all these jokes that I feel like normally I would not have found very funny if it was literally like, I was thinking it was like any other actor. I really don't think it would have landed, but he sells it, and I thought that was like a real testament to his talent. I think the movie's success, and just because people like, I don't know, I would say people consider it maybe not a classic, but a pretty, you know, renowned comedy. I think that fact is fully because of Jim Carrey. And you know, I actually I looked up some of the other actors that they were considering for the role. And it was like, it was Alan Rickman, you know, he plays Snape in Harry Potter, and Whoopi Goldberg, actually. And it's just like, I mean, the movie would have just completely flopped if it was like anyone else. So I think that was my biggest takeaway. I think he, you know, very talented, well-rounded guy. I can't really say that I recommend the movie, you know. There's some good bits. I really like the opening sequence where he's like absolutely destroying someone's package, and like there was one other joke that I can't remember. I didn't write it down. So but yeah, no, it was all right.
Where do you think this would place against all of Jim Carrey's other filmography?
I mean, we just discussed like a infinitely better movie, I think, and I think that he has a few like way better movies, a lot. And I can't say that I would rank this very, especially now. I think he just has a lot of, even in the comedy aspect, he has like a lot of better stuff out there. I mean, Truman Show is like really good. Obviously, Eternal Sunshine is great. I'm trying to think. I mean, even Sonic, I would say, is better. Yeah, I can't say that I would really rank this movie very high. I give it like, you know, maybe 3 stars, maybe 2.5. It wasn't.
Out of 5.
Yeah. it wasn't great.
I haven't seen the original movie, but I do know that it does have two sequels. One which released a year after, and another which released in 2009. Like, do you think this movie like warranted or deserved like even just one sequel?
I mean, I can't really like argue with how successful it was at the time, so I could see how that would, garner like attention for a sequel. I will not be watching either of those movies. Like, if that answers your question, like I don't think there's really any point. I don't think there's, more story to be told. And I really, despite Carrie being, very funny, I don't think the character was memorable enough to get two other movies. So.
Campbell, do you know if Jim Carrey plays the main character in both of the sequels?
In the first sequel he does, but in 2009, it's like kind of like a soft reboot where the main character is Jim Carrey's character's son. So I don't believe he's in that one.
Okay.
Don't they do the exact same thing in The Mask?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was gonna say that's.
I'm Campbell, and I watched the movie The Mask. Released in 1994, The Mask is a movie in which a low-life bank teller, played by Jim Carrey, discovers a mask imbued with the spirit of the Norse god Loki. When wearing this mask, he's infused with reality warping abilities, which land him in serious trouble with the mob. As for my review of the movie, Jim Carrey is able to share a really wacky side, but I found literally every character aside from him just to be forgettable and not really entertaining at all. Jim Carrey playing the mask, by today's standards, isn't honestly that impressive, and I don't know if I smiled like a single time while watching the movie. I'm pretty sure I had like just a blank neutral expression the entire time. One thing in my notes of this movie is that I did like check how much more the movie had left in it, only 34 minutes in, and the movie is an hour and 41 minutes long. The villains aren't really anything crazy. They're not memorable. They're kind of just like stereotypical mobsters who just want like money and power. And I don't really think I remember any of the characters' names except for Jim Carrey as Stanley Ipkiss. Nothing was really memorable like in this movie. I guess like the mask himself, as like some of the stunts he does, is pretty cool, but I mean, it's just, I was just really not impressed by it. It's worth noting, though, that I didn't think it was necessarily bad. I just didn't think it did anything good in particular. Nothing wild, unexpected that would give a lasting impression on me. So I would personally give it 2.5 out of 5 stars.
After that review, do you think maybe you can see now why Jim Carrey has never won an Oscar?
I can definitely, I can kind of get a little more perspective on that, yeah, because obviously he has a lot of range, but I think the movie itself, like Jim Carrey is definitely the best part of this. It's kind of like what you were saying with Ace Ventura. I just, yeah, I can kind of see why he wasn't really like considered, because he is pretty wacky in this movie, but the movie itself like really is just mid overall. So
Yeah, God, it's been a fat minute since I watched it, but I honestly I think it was just my same complaint with Ace Ventura, is that it's like just honestly I'd say even more so with The Mask. It's just like very just like slapstick humor, just like all the time,
Would you watch this movie with your family?
It's family friendly, but I wouldn't want to subject them to being bored for an hour and 41 minutes because I have a heart. So no.
All right.
So the movie I watched was The Truman Show. It's a movie in which you follow a man named Truman Burbanks as he begins to gain self-awareness and deconstruct that his life has turned out to be fake this entire time. I'm going to be straight to the point. It's been a couple of months since the last piece of media made me stare at my screen in pure awe. And I have to think that this movie classifies as some form of cosmic horror. A show inside a movie is a concept that feels like incredibly hard to pull off. But my God, it was executed perfectly here. I also have to say that Jim Carrey's acting was beyond impressive. I've never seen spiraling done this well. Especially during that one scene where he takes his wife into the car and starts driving around like a maniac, and he begins to point out every single convenient inconsistency that happens. That traffic suddenly jams, then every car comes in sync to the right and to the left, and he goes and runs outside of the town, and all of a sudden there's a nuclear meltdown. Because there's no way to explain that rationally in his mind. There are a lot of little moments in the movie that sit in the back of my mind a lot. The one I can name off the top of my head is the scene with the bus driver's discontent, and as well as his hesitancy with starting and failing to start the bus when Truman is trying to leave again. There was also the scene with Marlon and Truman at the bridge that was under construction that, after watching it, I had to pause and go lie my face in my hands for like a minute, because it was the way that it was framed and how it was slowly revealed that Marlon was being given instructions or words to repeat to Truman while trying to comfort him out of his mania. That was haunting.
So, as you see in the film, there's a lot of moments that he picks on and like makes him suspect that something's off and that maybe he's in a TV show. Where in the film where do you think he figures out that, yo, I'm in a TV show? Like, which part of the film do you think he puts that all together?
I think it was when he might have seen his dad for the first time, and he was very much whisked away onto the bus, as well as, like, I think either before or after that, seeing props behind the elevator in that one building. He starts getting very suspicious because, as you know, he lost his dad at a very young age, and even has, he gets very nauseous and scared when he's around the water because his dad drowned. I think that kind of just set off that, hey, something isn't quite right here.
One of my favorite aspects about the movie, and I didn't really think of this until a while after I watched it, but they acknowledge kind of all the questions that someone might have about a person living in his situation where your entire life is just being televised on this island, I felt like they raised those questions themselves without kind of leaving it up to the viewer to be like, okay, well, what if, like, I mean, literally anything that goes down the film, like, it opens with like a light falling from, what he presumes to be the sky, right? And they covered up with like a radio show saying that it was like a plane or something. And I think that they don't leave a lot of room for discussion about, like, anything that they could have left out. And I thought that was, I don't know, I thought that was done really well. That's probably my favorite part of the movie.
Yeah, I think that was actually a pretty clever, because now, just, of course, it answers all your questions there, and then, it brings up, these hypothetical answers to those questions. Like, they invented a billion tiny little cameras. They also, made the stage set or the set super big, and then, they're also being watched from the moon, which is pretty cool, actually.
Personally, this is one of my favorite films of all time, and like I think it's a masterpiece. That's why I'm curious. What would you rate it out of 5 stars?
Probably a 4.5 or just a 5 in general. I found this movie to be perfect as well.
What do you think happens like after the end scene? Like, how do you think Truman would respond to like the outside world?
Good question. I think he probably has some hard time adjusting to it. Of course, visually it's not much different, but he's gonna, he might have to learn not to put up an act anymore, or continue to based on where he is. But it's gonna be a process of just trying to adjust to not, or, trying to process how your previous life and like those, I don't know, 20 something years behind you was all fake, was all acted. And now there's no more acting anymore, and you're going to have to face things head on, I guess.
And could you give an explanation of the ending of the film for the viewers that haven't seen it?
Sure. At the ending of the film, Truman basically tricks the entire audience into thinking that he was asleep before it's shown that he's made his way outside and to the harbor, in which he starts sailing back out to, or is like, sailing as far out as possible. And when he does, or when they do find him sailing out, the director decides to try and pull all the stops out, tries to, catch him in a storm, catch him, try to capsize his ship, tries to, do everything. Truman says to him, "You're going to have to try and kill me if you want to stop me." And, it would be a devastating heartbreak to see Truman die, because it was shown that he was beloved by the outside world. But eventually he does make it to the edge of the set, and when he does, it's an extremely jarring crash in which his boat, punctures the skybox, I guess, or the sky. And then he slowly inches towards stairs that lead to the exit. The director tries to negotiate with him, being like, "You can stay here. This place will be safe for you." But instead, he just goes and leaves.
Thank you for listening to the Never an Oscar podcast. I've been Campbell Morgan.
My name is Beckett Lundgren.
I'm River Tokunaga.
I'm Nafisa Wahab.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you.